You are watching India Business Hour. U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has said that the Trump administration is thinking about acquiring equity stakes in top defense contractors such as Lockheed Martin. Speaking to CNBC, Lutnick called Lockheed a government arm as it makes most of its revenue from federal contracts. He also said that Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook does not deserve to be in her position if she committed mortgage fraud. Remember, U.S. President Donald Trump has said that he has fired Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook for allegedly committing a mortgage fraud.
A governor of the Federal Reserve literally signs her name and commits mortgage fraud, right? It's alleged that she's committed mortgage fraud, and she says, I'm not going anywhere. Well, the crook always says, I'm not going anywhere. And why would anybody defend that? The real question should be, did she commit mortgage fraud, yes or no? And if you did commit mortgage fraud, please get out of the federal government, get out of the seat of the governor of the Federal Reserve, and go away. You don't deserve to be there if you've committed mortgage fraud. There's a monstrous discussion about defense. I mean, Lockheed Martin makes 97% of their revenue from the U.S. government. They are basically an arm of the U.S. government. They make exquisite munitions. I mean, amazing things that can knock a missile out of the air when it's coming towards you. But what's the economics of that? I'm going to leave that to my Secretary of Defense and the Deputy Secretary of Defense. These guys are on it, and they're thinking about it.
Well, USA is the biggest market for Indian seafood exports, especially shrimp. So, the 50% tariffs effective from the 27th of August puts this industry in a fragile position. CNBC-TV18 Santiago reports that exporters, aquaculturalists and fishermen are hoping that the government will come to their rescue, without which crores of livelihoods will be destroyed.
This is Sassoon Dock, Maharashtra's seafood hub. It's buzzing with fishing boats offloading the day's catch and tons of seafood being processed for market. It's an over 6-decade-old industry with stakeholders having worked here for generations. But these people now fear their way of life will soon come to an end. They blame this man, American President Donald Trump. Till the beginning of August 2025, frozen seafoods exports to USA attracted a duty of 10%. But President Trump raised this first to 25% and then to 50%. Exporters say this high tariff will kill what has been a lucrative business.
90% of exporters will face the brunt who are doing, because most of them, these farmed aquaculture products, 90% goes to the US. US and China are the major markets.
Fishermen and aqua farmers will also feel the brunt because exporters are planning to pass on the extra tariffs up the chain.
We fear, the pre-processors and the workers and the fishermen fear that the exporters will entirely put the tariff cost on us.
Stakeholders across the chain say that the additional tariffs will cost millions of people their livelihood.
एक तो मच्छीमार कोलंबिया प्रॉन्स नहीं मिल रहा है और वो किधर से तकलीफ करके पकड़ के लाने का, और इधर नई मार्केट मिला 50% टैक्स डाला तो वो ध्वस्त हो जाएगा और सब मच्छीमार को आत्महत्या करना पड़ेगा।
धंधा कम होएगा तो मदद मिलना ही पड़ेगा ना सरकार से। हम लोग को नहीं मदद मिलेगा तो क्या करके खाएगा? हम लोग का भी पेट है ना।
तो अब वो झींगा ही नहीं रहेगा तो हम लोग छिलेगा क्या, और हमारा पेट पानी चलेगा कैसा?
The US is a crucial market for Indian seafood exporters, accounting for over 36% of India's total seafood exports. From $2,500 million in FY23, India's marine product exports to the US have risen to nearly $2,700 million in FY25. Shrimp is a major constituent of these exports. Andhra Pradesh's Fisheries Department says that Trump's tariffs will lead to India losing its competitive edge, with shrimp from countries like Thailand, Ecuador and Indonesia becoming up to 40% cheaper. Between fishermen, packers, processors and exporters, the seafood export industry employs over 3 crore people in Maharashtra and 50 lakh people in Andhra Pradesh alone. The total number rises sharply when other coastal states are added to the mix. These people hope the government will come to their aid sooner rather than later.
For the fishermen, if the diesel cost is 90-95 rupees or more, so they should at least get it to 80 rupees, the diesel cost. And for the pre-processors, now we are pre-processors. We have got cash credit facility, overdraft facility. So our rate of interest is approximately 11 to 12%. So something they should get it for to 7 to 8%. And of course the exporters, the electric cost is too much. So some subsidy they should give.
Some state governments have already responded. Andhra Pradesh, for instance, has announced a cut in feed prices and electricity subsidies, but many are still discussing options. Exporters say they have started working on developing and strengthening new clients, new markets for their product, but it is a slow and time-taking process. So in the meantime, they are seeking GST relief, lower interest rate on bank loans, tax credit, subsidies on electricity and diesel, and waiver of other duties. They say in the absence of timely and meaningful government support, India's seafood industry will be damaged beyond repair because of these Trump tariffs. In Mumbai with camera person Vijay Anand, this is Santya for CNBC-TV18.
So worrying situation that for the fisher folk. But with that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Business Hour. Thank you so much for watching. News and updates will continue right here on CNBC-TV18.
Hello and welcome to India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. The US doubles the tariffs on India to 50% starting tomorrow morning. Exports worth $60 billion to the US will be hit. India and Brazil are the only countries facing the highest tariff rate of 50%. Stalled exports, disrupted supply chains, threatened livelihoods. India's gems and jewellery sector braces for a tough ride with higher US tariffs set to come in. Industry warns that nearly 1.7 lakh workers could lose their job. The textile sector seeks a special financial assistance. The shrimp industry warns of an 80% hit to revenues. A sell-off on Dalal Street. The Sensex and the Nifty post the biggest single-day decline in 3 months. 42 of the 50 Nifty stocks close in the red. Manufacturers and retailers are hoping for an early rollout of the GST cuts as buyers hold back on high-value spends. Early indications point to sales being deferred in sectors like auto. India Inc. seeks an assurance from the Finance Ministry that GST cuts will not result in duty inversions. Sources say if the cost of inputs is higher than the finished goods, it will negate the tax cuts and prices will not drop for consumers. That's an exclusive. Prime Minister Modi flags the first unit of the e-Vitara, Maruti's electric vehicle, from its plant in Gujarat. It will be exported to 100 nations. Prime Minister Modi also inaugurates a lithium-ion battery manufacturing facility. At least 9 people dead after incessant rains and flash floods hit Jammu and Kashmir. This includes 5 deaths due to a landslide en route to Vaishno Devi Shrine. A red alert in Himachal as heavy rain sparked flooding fears in Manali and Mandi. Israel faces worldwide outrage after bombing a hospital in Gaza, killing 20 people, including 5 journalists. The hospital was bombed twice, and the second attack killed rescuers and journalists. Prime Minister Netanyahu apologizes for what he calls, I quote, as a mishap. President Trump says he's fired Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook for allegedly committing a mortgage fraud. Marks the first instance of a U.S. president firing a central bank governor in the Fed's 111-year history. Cook hits back, says Trump does not have the authority to fire her, adds she will not resign. Elon Musk files a lawsuit against Apple and ChatGPT maker OpenAI, accusing both companies of joining hands illegally to stifle competition. Musk takes aim at Apple's decision to integrate ChatGPT into its smartphone through an exclusive arrangement. Well, let's start with the day's market action. The market recording its biggest single-day fall that we've seen in 3 months ahead of Trump's tariff implementation. Remember, tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. India time is when the tariffs kick in. Financial stocks were weak today. The Nifty Bank down by about 700 points. Mid-cap index lost 900 points. The Sensex down 850 and 255 gone on the Nifty. That was the picture as far as the markets were concerned. In fact, the Nifty Bank closing at its lowest level since the 9th of May. All sectors in the red today, barring FMCG. More than 40 Nifty stocks closing in the red, registering losses of up to 4%. But this is the big story this evening. The suspense is over. Tomorrow, India will face a 50% tariff on its exports to the United States. The Trump administration has notified India about the imposition of the additional 25% tariffs, and it's blamed this on India's oil purchase from Russia. However, the US has not penalized China, which is the largest buyer of Russian oil. India's tariff rate is now higher than all of its peers in the Asian region, as well as its neighborhood countries like Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, all between 20 and 19%. India stands at 50%, along with Brazil, the highest tariff rate being imposed by the US on these two countries. Even South Africa and China face levies of 30% currently. China has also levied reciprocal tariffs on the US. So how will all of this impact India? According to data from the Global Trade Research Initiative, 66% of India's goods exports are set to be impacted on account of the higher tariffs. Gems and jewellery, textiles, seafood, these are the sectors that will be the hardest hit. In fact, the jewellery sector has already warned that nearly 1.7 lakh people could potentially lose their jobs. Steel and aluminum face a 50% tariff, but that applies to all countries and it's not specific to India alone. However, a select few sectors will be spared. Some pharmaceutical products, some copper items, autos and certain auto components, these are part of the exempt list at this point in time, so they will not face the additional US tariffs. If no steps are taken to reduce the tariffs, the GTRI estimates that goods exports to the US will be scaled down to nearly $50 billion in FY26 from $87 billion. That is the current number, and that's a decline of nearly 42%. However, GTRI expects India's overall exports to remain largely stable as it predicts a 10% rise in services exports to offset the impact of the higher US tariffs. In fact, we've been speaking with experts. A member of the Reserve Bank's Monetary Policy Committee, the MPC, Ram Singh, says India has enough fiscal and monetary cushion to withstand the tariff impact. Take a look.
We have ample monetary space and fiscal space to deal with this situation. We have enough cushion to absorb this shock and not let it multiply to show up as heightened inflation. Inflation trajectory is very, very comfortable in the near future for next 2-3 quarters. So we can take this hit. It's a hit, but we can take it.
At this stage, Donald Trump does not want to take any action against China. And so since he was coming under criticism and he felt that he needed to take some action, he's decided to take action against India, levying this additional tariff. Donald Trump, for his own domestic political reasons, is prepared to throw the India-US relationship under the bus. And so there will be consequences flowing for that. I think ultimately US has to make an assessment that the India relationship is important for them.
Well, reactions there coming in. And as I mentioned, India's gems and jewellery sector is also bracing for a rough ride, as are textile companies. Manisha is standing by with more. Manisha, explain to us how this is likely to impact both these sectors. What will this mean for gems and jewellery as well as textiles?
Well, absolutely. As you mentioned, India's gem and jewellery industry will be amongst the worst affected due to the US tariffs. US is the biggest market for the sector, accounting for 40% of its overall exports, which is worth $10 billion. The 50% tariffs make India far less competitive compared to countries like Turkey, Vietnam and Thailand, which face tariff rates less than 20%. And the jewellery industry has issued an SOS warning about potential job losses to the tune of 1.7 lakhs. The industry has also written to authorities seeking relief, including special schemes and a duty drawback scheme as well. The industry is also seeking market access initiatives and deferring of the interest cost on working capital. The industry is also looking at government approval to offloading the stock in the domestic market. The president of the Gujarat Jewellery Association did not mince his words, saying that 50% tariffs effectively make it unviable to trade with US.
Very tough time, very challenging time. It's very difficult to work with US. As I mentioned in my previous interview also, 25% also very difficult to ask. 50%, so there is no point of discussing anything. We'll have to explore new markets. We'll have to negotiate. My team, GJPC, is also working very hard with Commerce Ministry. There is sufficient goods in pipeline in US. So I'm hoping this season will not be wiped off absolutely. But the road ahead is very, very tough.
Another sector that will feel the brunt of the tariff is textiles. The US accounts for 35% of India's total textile exports. The value of these exports last year was nearly $11 billion. The industry is also asking for government intervention. Textile exporters are calling for a special financial assistance to tide through the crisis. Many textile units in Tamil Nadu's Tirupur have been shut as consignments are put on hold. The industry is fearing job losses, even though has not happened so far. The industry fears that the exports to the US could decline by anywhere between 28 to 40%. The Federation of Indian Exporters remains hopeful, though, that both nations are engaging in talks and that would ease the tariff burden going forward.
We are also hopeful that very soon they will come on a negotiating table. As and when the BTA is finalized, please bear in mind that the top two leadership has given a terminal date of fall of 2025, which is still a few months away. And therefore, we have time till October to finalize the deal. To bridge in, they don't have that much of profit margins. And therefore, I'm pretty sure that in September, we will see export to US dropping down drastically. The good thing is that 45% of the export, which is under Section 232 or in the exempt category, that may continue for some more time.
The garment industry, of course, will be hurt because a big portion of their exports go to the US. Jewelry, gems, that sort of thing will be hurt. So those are the three industries, I would say, which will be most hurt by these tariffs. But overall, we would see maybe 0.5% to 0.75% cut in the growth rate of the Indian economy. In other words, instead of going up by 7 or 6%, we might see 5.8 or 6.1 in terms of economic growth for India. So generally speaking, it's bad for India, but it's not disastrous.
Well, so that is the big story. The 50% tariffs, the notification has come in. They come into effect from tomorrow. But here's the interesting thing, that while India is being penalized for trading in oil with Russia, reports suggest, and here's Reuters reporting, that US and Russian government officials discussed several energy deals on the sidelines of the negotiations that took place this month, which had sought to achieve a peace deal for Ukraine. According to 5 sources familiar with the talks, this is what Reuters is reporting, that energy was part of the conversation, energy deals part of the conversation between US and Russian government officials. Moving now to the other big story. Manufacturers and retailers are hoping for an early rollout of the GST cuts as buyers hold back on high-value spends ahead of the festive season. Companies fear that customers could delay purchases, hoping for better prices after the tax cuts, and that's obvious. Reports suggest that dealers are reporting a noticeable dip in the booking of two-wheelers, cars and tractors. Anurag Mehrotra, the head of JSW MG Motor, says industries requested the government to expedite the new GST regime.
I think collectively as an industry, we are both from OEMs as well as dealers, everybody's come together and requested the government to precipitate the GST reforms, as the Prime Minister has mentioned on 15th of August. I think for us, given that our center of gravity is EVs or new energy vehicles, we are lesser impacted because the EV GST rates continue to be at 5%. But as an industry body, we are all working together to impress upon the government to expedite the announcements that may be.
And staying with the GST, India Inc. has sought assurance from the Finance Ministry that GST cuts will not result in duty inversion. Sources say that if the cost of inputs is higher than the finished goods, it will negate the tax cuts and prices will not drop for consumers. Timsy standing by with more. Timsy, inverted duties have been a problem for long, but this is a specific ask in the context of this GST rationalization exercise.
Well, sources have told CNBC-TV18 that several industries are now queuing up at the Finance Ministry, seeking government's assurance to ensure that GST rate cuts do not lead to any inversion. Sectors such as tractor manufacturers, pharma, medical devices, chemicals, fertilizers, textiles, insurance, they fear that a possible inversion due to rate cuts is what is likely that these sectors are going to face. And thus, these industries are sending detailed representations, seeking centre's intervention to ensure that inverted duty corrections also come in well within the time. Industries have suggested that if inversion is not taken care of, then the end products might not reflect a change in the pricing. Revenue Department, meanwhile, sources said, are taking cognizance of all such representations For example, at present, finished medicines, that is the formulations that you and I buy, they attract 12% GST. While API, which is the key ingredient, the core raw materials, they are taxed at 18%. So if the proposed reform pushes formulations or medicines to be taxed at 5%, keeping the rates of these APIs, which are the core raw material, at 18%, the inversion gap would widen from current 6% to 13%, raising liquidity concerns and compliance burdens. Thus, these sectors are saying that even as the reform is a welcome move, but without the rate parity between the raw material and the finished good, it risks squeezing the MSMEs, the industries, and undermining the India's overall economic health. We'll have to see what happens. Actually, government corrects these things or not, something that only GST Council decisions can
Timsy,
tell.
many thanks for joining us. Now, Prime Minister Modi flagging off the first unit of the e-Vitara, which is Maruti's electric vehicle, in Gujarat's Hansalpur. The Prime Minister also inaugurated a lithium-ion battery manufacturing facility. The auto giant will start deliveries of its electric vehicle in the next few months, and the target is to emerge as the country's largest electric car maker in the first year. Maruti will also export its EV to nearly 100 countries, including Europe and Japan. Speaking at the event, the Prime Minister said Maruti's project in Gujarat is a big leap towards the Make in India target.
भारत की मेक इन इंडिया इस यात्रा में एक नया अध्याय जुड़ रहा है। ये मेक इन इंडिया, मेक फॉर द वर्ल्ड हमारे उस लक्ष्य की तरफ एक बड़ी छलांग है। आज से भारत में बने इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल्स 100 देशों को एक्सपोर्ट किए जाएंगे।
Well, that is the Prime Minister. From Yes Bank getting a rare foreign investor green light to Paytm's freeze being listed, the Reserve Bank of India, under the current governor, Sanjay Malhotra, is signalling a shift in its stance. Let's first hear the governor, in his own words, decoding the RBI's easing stance, and then Ritu joins us to break down what this means for the financial sector.
We have not hesitated in relaxing a stringent rule once deemed necessary if the context changes and the cost-benefit balance reverses.
Well, that change in context is showing up across the financial sector, with the Reserve Bank under Governor Sanjay Malhotra signaling an important shift from strict guardrails to selective easing, and their actions tell the story. At Yes Bank, for instance, RBI gave Japan's Sumitomo Mitsui the green light to buy nearly 25% stake, which is a rare exception to the ceiling for single foreign entities and a strong vote of confidence, which is why you saw the stock spike up more than 5% intraday on the back of this yesterday. For Paytm, a near 2-year freeze was lifted with the approval for its payment company to act as a payment aggregator, and that pushed the stock up 14% since. But perhaps the most significant move has been the granting of a universal bank license after nearly a decade, where AU SFB became the first small finance bank allowed to graduate into a full-fledged bank, a regulatory milestone which saw its stock jump 8% intraday. Even Innocent Bank, where RBI had stepped in earlier this year, appointing an executive committee after the lapses of the spate of exits, now sees normalcy return, with Rajiv Anand approved as the new CEO. Earlier this year, we also saw the tech embargo on Kotak Mahindra Bank getting lifted after 10 months. Before that, the curbs on Arohan, Ashirvad and DMI were also eased. Beyond individual institutions, RBI has also been easing liquidity rules, restored lending flexibility for NBFCs, MFIs, expanded co-lending rules, relaxed project finance, and so on. And the thread across all of these moves has been the regulator shifting gears. Strict scrutiny where lapses do emerge, but pragmatic relief also, in the governor's own words, when the context changes and the cost-benefit balance reverses.
Ritu, many thanks. A shift in stance there from the RBI. But the big national story, at least 9 people dead after incessant rains and flash floods hit Jammu and Kashmir. This includes 5 deaths due to a landslide en route to Vaishno Devi Shrine, 2 people dead in the Doda district after their house collapsed, while 2 others died in the flash floods. Traffic on the National Highway 244, which connects Doda with Kishtwar district, has been suspended after a large stretch of the road was washed away. The Srinagar-Jammu highway has been shut at the Ramban district due to the landslides. The Sinthan Top Pass connecting the Kashmir Valley with Kishtwar has been closed. Heavy snowfall in the Jojila Pass has also blocked the Srinagar-Leh highway. At least 18 trains have been cancelled in the state. The Vaishno Devi Yatra has been suspended and rescue operations are currently underway. Several tourists stranded in Leh as the airport remains shut for the second day. In Jammu, the airport has now been closed due to inclement weather. And the picture is grim in Himachal as well. Heavy rains and landslides left a trail of destruction across the state. The Met Department has issued a red alert as heavy rain sparked flooding fears in Manali and Mandi. Here's a ground report from Jammu and Kashmir and Himachal Pradesh.
देखिए बेहद ज़्यादा तबाही का मंजर यहाँ पर देखने को मिल रहा है। लोगों का काफ़ी ज़्यादा नुकसान हो चुका है। ये गोदाम था, यहाँ पर तवी नदी के नज़दीक था। यहाँ पर शमशान घाट था, एक मंदिर था शिव का, वो भी बह गया है और शमशान घाट भी पूरी तरह से क्षतिग्रस्त हो गया। फ्रिज, टीवी और ये ढेर जो आपको दिख रहे हैं, ये गोदाम से फ्रिज, कूलर, एसी, ये सारे जो है वो ताश के पत्तों की तरह बाढ़ में तब्दील हो गए, बाढ़ में बहने लगे हैं।
तस्वीरों में दिखा जो आप देखते हैं कितना भयानक ये मंजर है और आप देखते हैं कितना जलस्तर जो है ब्यास नदी के यहाँ पर जो है बह चुका। और इसके साथ ही आप देखते हैं कि दूसरी तरफ की तस्वीरें भी मैं आपको दिखा जो आप देखते हैं कि दूसरी तरफ की जो तस्वीरें हैं ये मनाली चंडीगढ़ नेशनल हाईवे की है जो पूरी तरह से यहाँ पर जो है क्षतिग्रस्त यहाँ पर हो चुका है क्योंकि ब्यास नदी में जलस्तर बढ़ने के कारण जो है ये मार्ग जो है वो पूरी तरह से कई मनाली से कुल्लू के मध्य कई स्थानों पर यहाँ पर जो है बाधित हुआ है। और इसके साथ ही आप दूसरी तरफ की तस्वीर देखें, दूसरी तरफ जो है ब्यास नदी यहाँ पर बह रही है। इस ब्यास नदी में जिस तरह जो है देर रात को भारी बारिश हुई उससे काफी ज्यादा पानी का जलस्तर यहाँ पर जो है बढ़ चुका।
Well, devastation there across Himachal Pradesh and Jammu and Kashmir. We will be updating that story as we get more details. Up next on India Business Hour, we turn the spotlight on one of the sectors that's bracing for a rough ride on account of the 50% Trump tariffs. Ashmit is here to give us a quick peek into what we can expect. Ashmit.
Well, that's right, Shireen. The shrimp industry finds itself in choppy waters, bracing for a massive revenue hit. That and much more up next.